Welcome to the design course. In this two-part series, we're going to learn about both marketing page design and application UI. In the first video, we're going to be designing a landing page for a fictitious Saas company called Surface. And the topics we'll cover are design inspiration starting points, layout and spacing, element sizing, color, typography, responsive design, and accessibility. Now, this is a build-along course, so go ahead, create a new Bubble app, and let's get started. If you went ahead and skipped the application assistant, that's absolutely fine, because you can just jump straight back into your Styles tab and follow along. So let's change our app font to Poppins. Poppins is just a really nice, rounded, modern style font. And by changing our app font, it means that all of our text elements, buttons, inputs, all of the default text will be changed to Poppins. Now we're going to be starting off with some real basic color schemes because I want to prove the point that we don't necessarily need much color to make our designs look super professional. And the correct use of color can either hinder the user experience or improve the user experience. So we're going to leave color mostly out of this course, but we'll talk about it at the end. We'll talk about where to get color inspirations, color palettes, and accessibility, which is the contrast between colors. For now, I just want you to set the primary color to 12, 12, 12. Okay, that's just a black color. All the text, I want you to set this to just 2s across. Slightly darker. We'll set the rest shortly. Let's click next. And we won't be using any plugins in this course. Okay. Now, before we get started, let's just review what we're going to be building. So here is the demo app. And we've got this lovely surface color that we're going to add at the very end. We've also got a Navbar up here, which we can't see very well at the moment. So let's go ahead and preview this page so we can see everything working. And there we go, nice and clean. Let's scroll down. We've got this lovely big dashboard image, and I'll show you where I got this dashboard image from. But obviously this needs to represent or give insight to the user about what your application looks like if they become a user. So we're just keeping it really, really simple, but this is enough to talk through both practical and theoretical web design. You can see we've got a lovely little shadow dividing these two sections. Okay, I'm going to right-click and choose Inspect. And now this gives me the ability to view this design with breakpoints. So if I click on this little button, this little button here, I've got my various breakpoints. There's a 375 breakpoint. And I can scroll down, we can see that the Navbar changes color. Image is reduced, this text size is reduced as well. And I can view the mobile navigation. Here's the tablet size, looking good. And here's the desktop size. Now I'm currently using a Chromium browser called Arc, A-R-C. So if you have access to Chrome or a Chromium or Brave browser, rather use that particular browser so that you can also inspect and use the responsive design features of this browser. Can it work in Safari? Yes, it can. You'll just need to figure out how to get to the responsive tab. Okay. So how did I come up with this design? Let's talk about inspiration. And the first thing I'll say is that you really want to do a lot of research. You've obviously done the research for the particular type of business that you want to build or product. And you probably have a feel for what is currently working in your particular industry. And while I like to take inspiration, I always want to change designs and amend it for my particular audience or use case. You never just want to sort of copy, especially if you are looking at inspiration within the same industry. So how did I get to this particular design? Let me show you. So here I'm actually on Webflow. And I think Webflow is a fantastic design tool. They also have many great templates. And I was just browsing their template database looking for design inspiration. Now this one by Flowbase is basically called Surface. And you can see that I've borrowed from the background color, the logo, and some of the layout and spacing. But I've definitely made it my own. Now another very good resource is saaslandingpages.com, where you can filter by the landing page, pricing page, about us, etc. Let's go back to the landing page. Now these are actual companies, right? So we're looking for inspiration, not to copy. Definitely not to copy. Let's have a look at this one. So we've got a 2-column layout with a large separation between the title text and the subtitles. Pretty cool, actually. It definitely catches my eye. This image is high quality as well. So we're going to be building something like this, a little social proof section. But I love the way that they've divided their columns and rows with this gray background color. We can also visit the website. Yeah, that's amazing. I love the little page load animation. So rounded buttons. And you'll notice what we're going to be building is using rounded buttons as well. And what I'll usually do is inspect some of the elements on this page. So if we want to know what font this is, the size, spacing, the weight, well, we can just right-click, inspect. Okay, grab this little arrow icon and then hover over. And we can see the font information in this particular block. And it's jet black, 52 pixels in size, semi-bold. PP Mori is the name of this font. The subtitle text is 18 pixels. Now this is obviously at the smaller breakpoint. So what I'm going to do is go back to the desktop breakpoint by just repositioning some stuff. There we go. Let's have a look now. So 88 pixels for their main H1. And we can see that it's a H1 just below my mouse. It says H1 frame of text. So that's pretty large. But really, really beautiful. Let's have a look at the buttons. So we can see the padding of the buttons. We've got left-right padding of 16 pixels. Sorry, we've got top-bottom padding of 16, left-right padding of 28. And we can see the size of the buttons, 56 pixels tall by 200 wide. This little paragraph text down here is 16 pixels, and for this they're using Inter, and Inter I use for a lot of projects myself. Thought I'd use Poppins just to be a little bit different today. We can also see the color that they are using, 9s across. All right, all great stuff. Let's have a look at another design inspiration website. So this one is called Landing Folio. And this is more of a template and component library. Okay. But it's a similar thing. Here is a design system that I use every so often called Align UI. Let's have a look. Now this is a very, very high-end design. Something I've never really liked about this is the speed of this particular animation. I love the design of the animation, but the speed is a little bit jarring. But regardless, this is very, very high-end design. Okay, we're not going to be building something like this because Align UI is a design system for Figma users. So it's very sort of creative, busy, almost jarring in their approach. But, design is kind of like that. But the audience you're building for probably aren't designers. Maybe one or two of you have a designer audience, but they're probably businesses, B2C customers, that kind of thing. So our designs need to be cleaner, easier to digest, and good design is really about the user experience. Okay, it's not about fancy illustrations. And if we take a look at, say, Uber's site or Airbnb or Uber Eats or these big companies, their sites are basically designed for conversion purposes. How to get a user through their funnel or as far down their funnel and eventually, to the end result, which is booking a cab, booking an Airbnb, an apartment, or ordering a meal. That's the most important thing here. It's not about being this design wizard. And the good news about UI design in general is I'm actually not a designer myself. People seem to think that I'm this design guru with Bubble, but that's not really my background. I have a systematic approach to design because design is really about layout, spacing, using color as a tool, not as a distraction, being able to format and choose high quality images. It's not about being an illustrator or painter, that kind of thing. That's different. Logo designer. That's not what UI design is. Of course, we use logos and we use these assets, but we can grab those assets from other places. UI design is all about the layout, spacing, responsiveness, and making sure that people can use the site how we want them to. Okay, back on the project that we're building. And let's just talk through some layouts and spacing. Okay, so our navigation bar is the same color as the background. We're just going to use white to begin with, and we'll play with color later on. And we have a max width of 1200. Okay, why 1200? Because we're using the bootstrap breakpoints that Bubble provides us, and it's industry standard as well. So 3-column layout. Beneath that, we have a hero section. Our hero section obviously has a column. All of these elements are in their own group, and there's definitely a max width here because we have the text is wrapping. Okay, so we know that there's a max width there as well. Then we have an image beneath that. We've got something fancy going on here where the image is beneath this section. Then in this section, we have a column layout basically around these two elements with the repeating group. And in the repeating group, we have an option set of logos. Right, let's inspect and look at the responsive design. Bring this down to 375, which we've already done, but I did want to point to just a few things here. We can see that the navigation bar has changed significantly. It's not a 3-column layout anymore, it's a mobile navigation bar. The image is a lot smaller, and these logos are smaller, and the text sizing has also changed. So we'll be making these changes conditionally. Okay, let's jump back into our Bubble app and let's start building. So let's just set up some defaults first. So you can double click on the page to bring up the property editor, or you can just click on index in the element tree on the left. Let's rename this to surface. Let's head over to the layout tab. I'm going to change the container layout to a column, all right? Because the page grows as we keep adding sections vertically. I'm going to change the default builder width to 1200. And I'm going to leave the min height for now. The min height will basically grow as we keep working down the page. So what we'll do is keep referring back to the completed design to make sure that we're heading in the right direction. But the first thing I'd like you to do is head down to your container section and grab a group and just sort of draw in a small group. It's a little bit small. Bubble is in the process of sort of changing the user experience here. At the moment, whenever you drop a group on the page, it defaults to 40 by 40, but I think it should be max width. Anyway, Let's rename this group to group section first of all, and then after that, hero. This will become evident shortly. I also want you to go down and uncheck fit height to content. I just wanted to fill the entire space on the page. And the first element we're going to add on the page is text. So I'm just going to go to the original design, keep going back and forth, copying and pasting, but you'll need to type out this text. Here it is here. Grab the text element, drop it on the page. I'm going to paste it in, and I'm going to zoom in so you can read this. Build unique and beautiful websites with Surface. Okay, so we're pretending that Surface is maybe just a simple website builder. Now I want you to change your style to a heading 1. Okay, and then after that, we're going to center it. And because we changed our default font to Poppins, you can see that Bubble has now linked Poppins as the heading 1 font. Now I do actually want to make some changes here. Okay, the defaults do work quite well, but we need to know how to change defaults and how to adapt the typography styling so that it suits our vision. So I'm going to go ahead and edit the style. And what I'd like you to do is, first of all, change from bold to semi-bold. I'm definitely more of a semi-bold kind of designer. I find bold just a little bit extreme. I don't think we need to use bold very much. In fact, I don't think I use bold at all on most of my designs these days. Okay, let's adapt the font size to 54 pixels. Now the line spacing for large text is too much. Okay, before we change this, let's just go have a look. I'm also going to center this text vertically. I'm going to uncheck that. But if we go back to the design, now if I had to go to the layout tab, now this is just an example, you don't have to follow along here, I'll let you know when it's time to pick up the mouse. If I had to say 576 max width, and if we look at this, the line spacing, the space between the lines of text, is quite extreme. It's actually far too much. So the larger the text is, the less line spacing you need. The smaller the text is, down to about 16 pixels, that would be the largest line spacing, because 16 pixels was usually your regular body text size, and that's usually the text size that you would, for instance, read a blog post, and that's, you want a little bit more space with that. Okay, so I'm going to go back, edit the style, and I'm going to change line spacing to 1.1. And what I'm also going to do is change the letter spacing to -1. So much like when it comes to line spacing with large text, to make it more readable and legible, you also want to reduce the letter spacing a little bit. Okay, you'd only really do this for your H1, H2, H3, and then all the rest of your typography styles would just have the default, which is 0. Okay, this is looking much better. Now I am going to remove this max width, and you can pick up your mouse again. Sorry, and also make sure that I've just unchecked fit width to content. We wouldn't do that for text. But also want to make sure that in the edit style that you did actually change this to 1.1 and -1. So go ahead and do that. Okay. So we have this group section hero, and I want you to do the same as me here. I'm going to detach the style. I'm going to go down to background style and choose flat color. I'm going to change this to, let's just find a blue here. Okay, it doesn't need to be exactly what I'm doing. For instance, I'm using 0400FF, but I'm going to change the color to 10%. Please do the same, because we're talking about layout and spacing now. Because the way we achieve beautiful layout and spacing, aside from the particular numbers that we're going to be using or values, is about nesting groups within groups within groups, because when it comes to a group, that's where we can start applying whether it's a row, a column, we can change it to align to parent. We're going to be doing all of these things, but you always want to be applying these values to groups rather than elements themselves, for the most part. I'm going to go back to my text now, because if we look at the example, we have this text in the middle, okay? And it is grouped with other elements, subtitle text, buttons, a badge at the top here. So we definitely need this in the middle. So I'm going to right click group elements in a column container, because I've showed you elements that are stacked. I'm going to call this group container. And now on the layout, let's have a play here. What about, so I showed you an extreme example of 576. What about 768? That looks pretty good to me. Now I want you to head back to appearance, please, because I want you to choose flat color again. And we can actually go grab this color here on group hero section. And maybe let's do this. Let's change this to, no, actually we won't. We're just going to use this as a short exercise. So grab this color, and on the left-hand side in your elements tree, head down to group container and then paste this color back in. And then change it to 10%. So you probably deduced from this that I'm trying to determine where the groups are and how the groups react. Okay, let's head back to the layout and we can say horizontal alignment in the center. And now let's add our subtitle text. So I've gone back to the demo. I'm going to grab this. And by the way, I'm going to link in both I'm going to link in the editor in the description below. So go ahead, click the link, and you can jump into this app and copy and paste, okay? I'm going to grab a text element and I'm going to drop it inside this group, okay? Like so. Another way to do this is to just drag text like this. There we go. All right, I'm going to paste that in. And you can see that we need some styling here. So let's have a look. So we've got body 16, 1.4 line spacing. So let's edit the style of body to 16 rather. I'm going to change this to medium. So Poppins, medium, 16 with our text color. So I'm going to override this so it's center aligned. What I tend to do is leave my styles left aligned, and if I need to make a small change like an alignment change, or in a few instances I need to change maybe the color very, very slightly, instead of creating many styles, I just keep my base styles and I just adjust them very slightly occasionally, which we've done now. Fantastic. Okay, with that done, I'm going to go ahead and click back on group container, because we want some spacing between this text. This text is touching each other basically. We don't want that. So I'm going to go to layout and I'm going to choose gap spacing. So that is very descriptive. I'm going to choose 24 pixels. And the way gap spacing works is if I now drop another element in here, such as a button, you don't need to do this. If I do drop a button, the space between the button and this text is 24 pixels, as well as this text beneath. So that's the way gap spacing works. It's like, think of like a ladder. It ladders even spacing between your elements. So we'll be using gap spacing often on like containers that have lots of elements, but then we'll also be creating more groups within these containers, groups within groups, because it gives us granular control over layout and spacing. Delete that button for now. Okay, now this subtitle text, in terms of like visual hierarchy, obviously this text jumps out at us. First, it's the most important. It tells us the problem we're solving or what our app does, okay? But in terms of visual hierarchy, I also want to make sure that this subtitle text doesn't span wider than the text up here, because that does change the hierarchy ever so much. So in this particular instance, I am going to add a max width to this text now. So on the layout of the text, we've got a max width of 768 on the group container, but this text, I'd rather it be 576 and put it in the center. And this just reads a lot better. Okay, let's grab some buttons. Let's actually first review what we're building. So we've got a button get started, that's in its own group. Okay, and we've also got this badge up here that we'll get to. Let me just review some of the padding. Okay, great. So let's do this. We want a navbar at the top here. So what we're going to do is on the layout tab of group container, not on group container, sorry, on the group section hero, we're going to choose a top padding of 196. Okay, then I'm going to choose a bottom of 96. Now these numbers may seem arbitrary, but they're not. They're part of my own personal system, which is based on the 4-point system, which is just sort of a modern technique that is adopted by designers these days. In the earlier days, it was the 5-point system, meaning that if you want to increment up a level, you move from 5 pixels to 10 pixel spacing, from 10 pixels to 15 pixel spacing. But the 4-point system is far more granular. You can divide it by 2 in all instances, nice and cleanly. And it just gives, in my opinion, a much better visual hierarchy that we talked about earlier. So what you'll learn is, because we've got a navbar, I needed a bit more top padding here because we're going to lose about 80 pixels to this navbar. But when it comes to creating group sections, and the way a landing page works is that we've got our hero section, then our social proof section, then our features section, then our reviews section, footer section. Everything is a section and everything is aligned very, very neatly. We can collapse and hide those sections when we don't need them or when we're testing them, or we can apply different controls to each section. So section is basically a group that's placed directly onto the page. We never design directly on the page itself. We always drop in a group first. We name it group section, such as group section hero, group section social proof, etc. That's how we design a marketing page, okay? And these group sections are, in the most instances, going to have top and bottom padding of 96 for desktop, and that will conditionally change to 64 for mobile. These group sections will always have 32 pixels left-right padding. Okay, and I know what you're thinking, Greg, shouldn't this be a style? And yes, we're going to change this to a style shortly, but I want to continue with this exercise with nested groups and just complete this design a little bit more before we change it into a style. So let's add our buttons. Here's a button here, drop it in, and I'm just going to use my arrow key. I'm going to press down on my keyboard to get it to the bottom. Let's change this to an icon and a label. Let's say get started. Okay, and maybe let's use an arrow here. So I'm going to change to phosphor. I really like phosphor. Let me type in arrow. And I'm going to find a right arrow, or even, no, that you would usually denote a link. Let's choose a clean right arrow. Looking good, and I want the arrow on the right hand side. So on the layout tab, I'm going to choose icon placement on the right. That looks pretty good. But now that we're working with buttons, let's just adapt the style slightly because I want a pill-shaped button. So icon size 24 in terms of my sizing, element sizing system, that's perfect, 24 pixels. You can divide that by 4. I'm going to change this to a medium font. 600 for me is too bold for buttons. I'm going to change this to 16 pixels in size, part of the 4-point system. And by the way, feel free to do a Google search or a Perplexity AI search on the 4-point system. Okay, and do your own research on that. And then roundness, 8. Why? Just a creative choice, but also 4-point system. And let's remove the shadow style. So if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed with the sizing, we had 96, 32, we have 16, we have 8 pixels. These are actually what I use in my day-to-day life. I'll change them very, very occasionally, but most of the time, my buttons are going to be 16 pixels with 8 on the roundness. If I have a larger button, I might increase the radius size to say 12, or a smaller button, I might reduce it to say 6 or 4. But for the most part, it stays the same. So by the end of the course, you can just use this as a reference app and continue on building, okay? Okay, so that would be our primary button. Now, we did say that we wanted a pill-shaped, but I wanted to go through the exercise of just showing you what I'd use for a regular rectangular button. I'd always use 8 in the roundness for just a standard button. But instead, we need this to be larger. So let's just say 24 pixels, that gives us a pill shape. Okay, now there were 2 buttons that we needed here. So it looks like we have another button here, outline button. Okay. So let's use, well, that should really be a flat button. So we've got pop-ins, we're going to change this to medium, 16 pixels, and we're going to change the background to a flat color, our primary contrast, roundness to 8. And let's just see what happens when it's hovered. It changes the color slightly. Let's just choose a one-off color here. Usually this would be set up in my style variables first, but let's choose F1, F1, F1 if the button is hovered. Now for this particular button, okay, now I'm happy with that. Let's go back to the design. I'm just going to click on Command plus D to duplicate. And I'm going to say I just want a label only. Learn more. And we're going to change this to a flat button. Now we want these in their own group, okay? Because they need to be side by side in a row. So I'm going to highlight both of them, right click, group elements in a row container. I'm going to change this naming to group buttons. I'm going to have a look at the layout. Now, gap spacing is what we need. Let's choose, let's try 20 here. Yeah, 20 looks good. And let's choose horizontal alignment in the center. I can see that I forgot to add the roundness. I'm going to go back and edit the style and change roundness to 24. Gives us our pill shape. Okay. And then I'm also going to just go ahead back to the group container just to grab this blue color and just add it here just so we can see these groups for now, just so we can visualize them. And this is not something I do in my day-to-day life unless I'm building something slightly more complex. Then I absolutely will do this. It just gives me a visual representation of how my groups are responding, how the layout and spacing works together with the elements inside the groups, okay? But you won't always have to do this. But as you can see, we have our main group section, okay? We have this group here, group container, and then we have group buttons. Now we need one more element. That is our little badge element. Let's review. So it says AI assist, and we've got 2 elements in here. Obviously that would mean that it is a row layout. So I'm going to grab some text first of all, just get it inside, use my keypad to get this to the top. I'm going to type AI assist. And I suspect this should be probably a body small, which we don't have. Okay, so let's go through the exercise of adding a font here. So I'm going to go over to the styles, and I'm going to go down to text. Now I'm going to start with body. I'm just going to right click, copy, and then paste. I'm going to make sure that the copy is selected. Double click, change this so it says body small, and then simply the only thing I'm going to change is the size to 14 pixels. I'm not going to do anything else. Okay, now we can change this to body small, and we need this in a little badge. So I'm going to right click on the text, say group elements in a row, all right, because we need an icon next to it. Let's call this group badge. And let's get the icon in before we go any further. So let's go grab an icon, click once, drop it inside the group. And let's look for sparkle on the phosphor regular, sparkle. Okay, I'm going to edit the style of the standard icon because I want to remove the roundness, and on the layout and spacing, I'm also going to remove the padding. Okay. So sparkle's too large. Let's go to layout and try 20 by 20. Yep, that looks pretty good. I'm going to use my keypad to move it to the left inside this group. And I think for this group, now that we know what we're doing, I am going to change the appearance to give it a flat color of white. Roundness of 20, so it's a pill shape. And let's align everything nicely here. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove the min height, because the min height is currently 40 pixels. You can see I'm hovered over this group and we have 40 pixels by 78 pixels. Now why 78? Because we have fit width to content checked. If I had to uncheck fit width to content, the Flexbox system spans full width. Okay? So I'm going to fit width to the content within. The content within this group are these 2 elements here. Fit width to content. Let's just remove the min height. So now it fits height to the content within, which is the icon and the text. But we do want more graceful spacing within here. So the first thing I'm going to do is on the layout tab of group badge is check gap spacing. Then on the column, let's try 4. That looks good to me. Let's now scroll down and add top bottom padding of 4 and 4. Then left right needs a bit more. Let's try 8 and 8. Let's review. Okay, I want a bit more. I'm going to choose top bottom of 6 and 6, and then 12 and 12. I'm happy with that, and now I'm going to horizontally align it in the center. Okay, very, very nice. And in fact, this size can maybe come down to 16. 16. Divisible by 4, which means it's going to look very, very harmonious with the rest of the design. Now, before we remove the transparent blue color from our groups, let's first look at responsive design, okay? Because there are some design decisions to make, because the max width we have, the current width we're looking at for the group container is 768. But we need this to look good all the way down to, say, 375 or 320. That's up to us. But while we've got these groups colored, let's first see what happens in the responsive editor. So I'm going to go ahead and click on responsive. And Bubble's chosen 320 mobile breakpoint. This is a little bit dated. Let's actually change this by saying edit 375, and instead of pressing return or enter, rather click on this check. Okay, and I do want to add another one here as well. So this is part of the Bootstrap breakpoint system. These aren't arbitrary numbers. This is part of a design system. And it's not the only design system. There are many design systems out there. Bootstrap was one of the first, which is just a set of rules for UI design and what makes design so much easier. Because it means that we only need to adapt our design at these particular breakpoints. We don't have to arbitrarily think of or in a non-uniform approach create breakpoints. We just use these, we become familiar with them, meaning that we always know when the design needs to change. But I want to get slightly more granular, and I just want to show you how to add another breakpoint. There is a breakpoint here, 576, okay? I'm going to click on the little check icon. And this is the full set of breakpoints in the Bootstrap system. We've got another one at 1400, but I don't actually use the 1400 breakpoint because I always have a max width of around 1200. Okay, so at 576 it actually looks okay, but what about a 375? And here we can see it's quite problematic. What I am going to do though is, while you're in this view, just make sure that Group Hero section is highlighted. Head over to the property editor and click on Fit Height to Content. Boom. Okay, now the group section hero is fitting height to the content within. That content was squashed on the left and right sides horizontally, which means that it had to grow vertically, which is why we had an overflow issue, but that's now been resolved. But anyway, in terms of viewing this on phone, this wouldn't be a great user experience. There's going to be too much space at the top. This text is far, far too large. You don't really want it to be more than 3 lines, okay? And these buttons we could actually stack in a column layout. But because we had kept our groups with this transparent color, we can actually see where some of the problems are, such as the left-right spacing is too large. So now we're going to talk a little bit about responsive design. And what we're going to do is on the Group Hero section, okay, Group Hero section, head over to the Conditional tab, because we're going to define another condition. And this is called breakpoint conditionality. At a particular breakpoint, at a particular size that we determine in our expression right now, we are going to instruct that the left-right padding changes from 32 pixels at desktop to 16 pixels, so far less, so we get more screen real estate for our mobile phones. And that's what we want to do. You don't want huge padding on your phone. You want to use as much real estate as possible while keeping a little bit of a uniform approach to the padding as well. We always want that. We don't ever want content right up to the sides. It becomes difficult to interact with if so. So I'm going to type page. And I'm going to say that current page width, I'm going to start with that expression. Then I'm going to hit the smaller than sign. And then I'm going to say 576. Bubble's going to present our custom breakpoint of 576. I'm going to select that. So this expression says that when the page width size, which is dynamic, we don't know what our users are looking at our apps on, whether it's their phone, tablet, or desktop. But when the width is smaller than 576, then let's make a change. Let's change all of the padding. I want the top padding. Instead of 196, I'm going to change this to 96. Bottom padding, instead of 96, I'm going to change it to 64. Then the left-right padding, we're going to change to 16 and 16. These do jump around a little bit, so just make sure that you've typed, the left-right padding wants to be in the center here and top padding at the bottom. But you can now see that this is far, far easier, or it just looks like we are utilizing the screen real estate far better than previous. Now we can also do this to text, guys. We can actually do this to anything. So let's go to the text. And actually, let's just copy this expression. Copy expression. Head over to the text, define another condition, and then paste it in. Okay. So currently the font size, I'm not too sure what happened there, but the font size was 54 pixels, okay? So let's change this to 48. And we're just sort of experimenting here. Okay, so on 4 lines, let's change this to about 40, okay, 44. Now this is quite a long H1. Maybe if this was an ampersand and not an and, it would be on 3 lines. I'm not sure, but I'm much, much happier with that, okay? The user can scan, they can read this a lot quicker, and we can show them more content on page load. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. We're going to go through the same principles when it comes to our Navbar, which is slightly more involved, but we're going to learn a lot there as well. Let's head back to our UI builder, and now we can go ahead and change the group section. We can just remove the color from the group section. We can do the same on group container, and we can do the same on the buttons. Okay, just make sure that on the, let's have a look at the layout here, that's fine. Yeah, guys, we're ready to preview this, so let's go ahead, preview. And I'm going to go ahead and also remove the debugger bar on page load. So I went ahead and removed debug_mode equals true from the URL, just so I can test this nice and cleanly. So obviously our button, which is meant to have a white background, we can't actually see the white background, but this is a good lesson on hierarchy. Hierarchy meaning that the user, their attention is drawn to the more important parts. Obviously, this text is the first place your eye would be drawn to. Build unique and beautiful websites with Surface. Then after that, it would be this button. And this button is probably more important than the Learn More button, right? We want to convert them, get them into the next stage of our funnel a lot quicker. Why don't we go ahead and just add our surface color now so we can see our buttons and our badges clearly. And there's also a reason why I kept this text slightly darker than I would usually do. If I'm working mostly with text on a white background, in terms of hierarchy, I would actually make the body text slightly lighter, maybe like a graphite or dark gray color. That just helps again with hierarchy to show what's important on the page. Let's head back to the bubble editor and go across to styles, and let's choose style variables, and our surface color, let's change this. So it is FFF1E5. Back in the design tab, I'm going to click on group section hero, and I'm going to select, not the style, sorry, the background color of flat, and then I'm going to select our new color. Okay, you can see that that pops really, really nicely. This text is bothering me slightly. Why don't we say that, let's edit the style of body. Let's choose regular here. I felt it was slightly too bold. And I'm just going to go back. I kind of wish this was on 2 lines and not on 3 lines. So what can we adapt here? The ultimate starting point for businesses wanting to excel online. Save hours from your build and easily customize Surface to suit any type of business. I'm going to remove all brand. You can adapt this how you like, guys. Just keep a similar length. And then I'm going to say a great starting point. What else can we do? There's an and here. I'm going to use an ampersand sign. So Shift 7 on my Mac. There you go. Across 2 lines now. That's much better. Okay, and the hardcore designer in me would say, Greg, the spacing is a little bit too even between all of these elements. Let's bring the text closer together. So we chose a gap spacing in the group container of 24 pixels. Let's reduce this down to about 12. Let's halve it. So I'm going to group elements in a column container. I'm going to call this group text. And I'm going to add gap spacing of 12. Okay, very nice. Now we need to add an image, all right? And you can find the image as an asset in the description below. So I'm going to grab an image. I'm just going to get it inside for now. And now go ahead, guys, and upload the image that I've linked in the description. Okay, there's the image there. Now you'll notice that the image extension might look unfamiliar to you. I used .avif. This is a new compression standard, even better than .webp created by Google. Also very, very good. You might be used to JPEG or PNG. But these file formats are really large. Quality can be questionable at smaller sizes. So these two compression standards, WebP plus AVIF, which is the one you should use, these compression standards are good for the web. Okay, and this also pertains or has impact for your overall SEO score, especially in the instance of a landing page, where Google will score you based on how quickly your landing page lands. The biggest impact is image size. And you can go ahead and you can find converters for the static images that you have control over. Converters like convertio.co. Do a quick Google search for PNG to AVIF or JPEG to AVIF. And these converting services can convert any image style or any image extension to any other image extension. Don't sleep on this. This needs to be done. Bubble does actually do compression on the fly as well, usually using a service called CloudFront. But Bubble's not changing, say, a PNG to a different file type. It's just keeping it a PNG but reducing the size. But this is going one step further, okay? Let's head over to the Layout tab because I want to actually match the aspect ratio of this image element to the image I've placed inside the image element. So I'm going to check Keep Aspect Ratio Fixed. And I specifically designed this dashboard to be a 3:2 aspect ratio, which is a common photography and image aspect ratio. All right, now we can put it in the center. And I'm going to uncheck Fixed Width. Now that's far too large. Maybe you like that, but I want to contain it slightly. So I'm going to say 992, which you'll recognize is one of our Bootstrap breakpoints. Okay, I'm going to name this image dashboard. And for SEO purposes, I'm going to use an alt tag here as well. This is how a Google bot crawler understands this image. This is also for accessibility purposes, for people that can't see very well and listen to descriptions of images. Let's say Surface Application Dashboard. Okay, sort out the gap spacing in Group Section Hero. Head over to the Layout tab and let's apply some gap spacing. 64 pixels. Okay, so you've seen me use 64 already in our vertical padding. You've seen me use 32, which is half of 64. You've seen me use 24. All of these divisible by 4 and all part of the system, which is 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 32, 40, 48, 54. You'll get used to these numbers over time. But designing within a system is the cheat sheet. It is the way that you can create beautiful UI without being a designer. Let's preview this. Refresh the page. Very, very nice, guys. Look at that. Now you can see that I also designed this dashboard or adapted this existing designed dashboard because this is from a Figma kit, okay? I just adapted the designs or the colors, sorry, not the designs, just to match the sort of monochrome feel that we have. I didn't want to be overly monochrome, which is why I added a slightly surfacey color of, you can call that maybe a dusty pink or dusty peach. But because I wanted minimal color, I did want something to have a bit of vibrancy about it. So that's why I'm choosing this background color. You could also have used a slightly gray blue color here as well. I'm going to show you a little bit of a technique to make this image sit on the page and feel or look a little bit more comfortable. Right? It's got sort of sharpened edges and it just looks like it's been dropped into the position it's in. Let's make it feel more integrated. So let's do this. First of all, head over to the appearance. Let's change the roundness to 8. All right, just curve the roundness slightly. Now let's add a border of solid. And before we go any further, I'd like to go into the Styles tab, please. Style variables. And I want to create a new color here. I'm going to call this light gray or gray light, the other way around, because you'd have multiple tones of gray in any application. I'm going to say borders. And I'm going to use a color I often use for borders, which is EB, EB, EB. It's part of my own design system. And then what I'd usually do as well is have gray medium. Often I'd use this for placeholder content. And I'd usually have a gray dark as well. And that I often use for body text. But remember what I said, because I'm using a colorful background of the dusty pink, I can't use gray text on dusty pink. It clashes. It's also not good for accessibility. People that can't see very well will struggle with the contrast. We always want a good contrast. Now, I talked about page load speed, SEO scores in terms of the images. Google also scores you in terms of contrast on your page, how well people can actually see the content. Okay. So anyway, let's go back to gray medium. And gray medium, we want it to be around 80, let's do 84s across. And then in terms of gray dark, I want this to be more of a dark slate. So let's choose 38s across or 37s across. Okay, it doesn't have to be an exact science. But let me actually show you a resource that will give you these numbers where a lot of research has been done. So if you go to UI colors, right, just search that in Google. On UI colors, we have a CSS color generator with colors created or devised by a system called Tailwind, which is, I guess, the second most popular CSS framework after Bootstrap, but it will soon be the most popular. I'm absolutely certain of that. But anyway, we could find a color. Like you could start with if I think of my own education company called BuildCamp, one of my blues is, can't remember offhand, but the primary color is somewhere around here. What has been generated is all the shades that would work with this particular color, a harmonious palette, you call it. You could do the same with grays and blacks. So if I chose, earlier on we had, if we set our main color to 12, 12, 12, here are the various grays we can use. Earlier on I said 84, 84. So this was very similar, 8s across. Here we have 4F, 4F, 4F. I used an EB color earlier. Here we have E7, which is very, very close. Okay, a lot of research has been done around how to make harmonious color palettes by Tailwind. This is what I use. Now, if you didn't know which color to start with, you have no sort of starting point. Let's have a look at some of the other features. We can go ahead and head over to Browse. And guys, pick one of these, okay? You would use a 600 for your primary color. Go ahead and just pick one of these. But just be wary of what your business does and who the audience is. So if it's health-based, maybe you're using a green. Saas often uses purple. A lot of companies will be using blues. Airbnb is using something like one of these pinks here. Very, very similar. And of course you can adapt it, okay? So you can actually pick this particular blue. Here I've just copied it to the clipboard and I'm going to paste it in. But I'm going to adapt it slightly. So I'm going to say bring this down here slightly darker, and then it will adapt this for you. All right, fantastic resource. Pin it to your browser. I do the same and I use this almost on a daily basis. All right, guys, let's go back to the design tab, because back on this image, we are going to go to, appearance, and we're going to choose a border style of our light gray, EBs across. Now, the other thing we're going to do is, I absolutely love this little technique here. I'm going to choose outset. I'm going to choose 0 for the offsets and the blur radius. I'm going to choose, try 8. Yep, so you can see the spread radius of 8 coming out here. Then I'm going to choose white and then 50%. Okay, so outset, the only value is spread radius of 8 with 50% primary contrast. And when I was talking about having this image sit more comfortably in the design, this is what this achieves, in my opinion. So let's refresh. So as you can see now, we have the sharp edges. Let's refresh. I didn't want sharp edges. I wanted rounded edges because we have a rounded feel or a rounded approach into some of our designs here. So this just feels really, really nice. Sort of a glow about it on the outside. Now it's rounded and very, very soft. Okay, now with that done, let's go back to our demo app. Here's the demo app. Scrolling down, we have this little section down here. And I wanted to include this because I want to show you a little negative margin trick to get this image to sit behind the section. And I also wanted to show you how to use a repeating group to display things like company logos, which would then stack to a piece side by side when it gets down to mobile phone widths. Okay, now to achieve this, what we're going to do is grab another group. And I want the group on the index page here, okay? So I've clicked on index and I'm going to grab a group and I'm just going to drag it beneath group section hero or even above it to start with. Let's just call this group section logos. Hit enter. And on the layout tab, let's remove fit width to content so it spans edge to edge. It's at the top here, guys. It's at the top. I'm going to bring it down in a second. And then I want a background color of flat white because we're going to have something underneath it. Okay, that image will be underneath it. Now I'm just going to hit down on my keyboard, get it down there. And just so we have some space to work within, let's just add some min height here, maybe 320. Okay, so we have our section. So sections, remember, we're going to have padding of 96 and 96, top, bottom, left, right, 32 and 32. And now I'm going to click back on group section hero, right click to save myself some time. I'm going to say copy special, copy conditional expressions, which means I can just right click on group section logos and choose paste special, paste conditional settings. Now, we do always need to quickly double check. So breakpoints. So we're going to change the bottom padding here to 64. Okay. So let's go back and review the original design. So we have some text here. I'm just going to copy and paste. Don't forget you have access to my editor as well. And I'm going to grab some text, drop it in, paste that in. Okay, I'm going to change it to a center alignment like so. And I'm going to also change the text here and use my darker gray because this is now on a white background, so we don't have to use such a dark color. On the layout tab, I'm just going to choose center like so. And now we can add our repeating group with our logos. So in terms of storing the logos, let's head over to data and option sets. And let's skip the tutorial. And let's create a new option set. Call this logos. And by the way, you can actually jump into my app, right-click logos, copy, and literally copy it into your app. Now, to be able to copy an option set into your own app, you actually need one to begin with. So what I tend to do is just say dummy, okay, to start with. Then I'll go to the app, I'll right-click, copy, and then I can come back and right-click and paste. And then I can delete the dummy. The dummy's there just because we need an existing list here to paste into. But anyway, let's create a new attribute. This will be image. That is of type image. Okay, so what are the images we need here? We have 4: Forbes, Bloomberg, Fast Company, and TechCrunch. So Forbes, Bloomberg, Fast Company, TechCrunch. I'm not actually using the text itself, which is why I'm not sort of bothering with the case sensitivity too much. Anyway, modify attributes on Forbes. Go ahead, grab the assets in the description and follow along. Notice as well, guys, that these are SVG files, okay? I always go on about image size. SVG is micro, micro, micro. So if you can use SVG for your images, do it. Now, SVGs are, you'll find them for things like logos, okay? You can't use an SVG for the large image that I created with the dashboard. That's not what an SVG is for. It's for smaller block color style images, but use them where you can because they are micro, just a few kilobytes. Okay, that's Bloomberg. Fast Company. And TechCrunch. Let's grab a repeating group. Now you can just use standard methods of displaying these images, which is put them in a group with gap spacing and then drop in some image elements. But I prefer to use a repeating group where I can. This is a very great use case because you only design in the first cell and then it just repeats itself. So it makes sense in this instance. And if you're worried about page load speed, well, option sets are it's client-side data. So you're not doing a database call to display the data in this repeating group. So this is of type image. And where do the images live? Let's grab them from the data source. We'll say get an option, logos, all options please. Sorry, this is of type logos, but then we'll display them as images. Now we know that there are 4, okay, so I'm going to change rows to 1, columns to 4. Now in terms of the layout, I'm going to put that in the center first of all. And I'm going to set a max width. Let's try 768. I'm sort of a little bit uncertain at the moment. I'm going to remove the fit width to content because the max width controls the width. We need it to obviously be smaller and we'll deal with that later. In terms of the height, 80 is fine. So let's grab an image element and let's get it inside the first cell. All right. And let's hook up the data, current cell's logos image. We are going to, let's leave it at rescale for now. Let's remove the fixed width, remove the min width, and let's set a max width of these images to maybe 160, okay? Again, I'm sort of uncertain at the moment. But in terms of an aspect ratio, I'm going to set maybe a 4:1 aspect ratio. So how this works is, guys, this is an image element. This isn't the image itself. We are now going to be fitting the image itself into the image element. Now I've constrained the image element to be a max width of 160 with a 4:1 aspect ratio. However, I have left this to rescale, meaning that the image will always try to fit the height of this element itself, but we'll make sure that the aspect ratio is respected. Maybe this is easier just to demonstrate instead of to talk about the theory here. Also, while we're here, we need to do the alt tag. So we need the current cell's logos display, which is the name, then space on my keyboard, and logo. I'm going to type that in, okay? So let's head back. I'm going to change this as well, image logo. Let's head back to the layout tab. And I want this in the center, like so. And then if I click the repeating group, I'm also going to click on layout tab, container alignment centered as well. Okay, we don't want any separators, so I'm going to remove those, none. And let's have a look. What else do we want to do here? We need some gap spacing in group section logos. Let's choose 20. And this text, I think it's okay. Maybe we can just do this actually. We can just say, you're in great company. Return to the next line. So it reads in 2 lines. I've also noticed that the repeating group has a border. I'm just going to remove that. Ultimately, if I was building an actual app, these would all be styles. But let's first see how we're getting on with this design. Refresh. Scroll down. And there we go. Now, naturally, this would take me slightly longer. I've already built this. I built this yesterday. Just it's fairly fresh in my mind. So I would have experimented with, if I had another logo in there, maybe the max width would be 992. The max width of all of my content wouldn't really span past 1200 unless it was like a very specific design use case, like an edge-to-edge background color of a particular section. But most of the content you always want to keep fairly centered. So when users are scrolling down the page, you know, you're keeping them focused to the center. They can kind of get a feel for where the content is. They don't have to look or take their mouse and move the mouse all the way to the top right-hand corner, all the way to the top left-hand corner if they're trying to interact with the navbar, for instance. It's always important because we can't control a user's desktop size or laptop size. I'm on a fairly big desktop, and if I didn't have a max width on my content, it would look awful. It would be the hero container would be edge to edge with that large text just in one line. Okay, we always want to be or have control over the layout and spacing, which is exactly what we're doing here. Okay, let's head back. Now let's sort out our responsive design before we head to the navbar section, because the navbar is slightly more challenging. Actually, another thing I've noticed as well is in the original design, this one here, we have a shadow, and then this image actually overlaps or underlaps, I would say. How do we do that? So let's click on this text element, head over to the layout tab on image dashboard. I'm going to select -96. So here is a little trick, okay? That brings it down there. And we also need to remove the padding on group section hero. So I'm going to scroll down, remove the padding, and there we go. There's the overlap. Now I'm going to right click on group section logos and say bring to front. Boom. Okay. Now we need to add on the appearance of group section logos, we need to add some shadow style of outset. Now I want vertical outset here, so I'm going to choose maybe -8. Remove the horizontal. We don't need horizontal. Maybe blur radius 16, and then I'm going to choose black. And I'm going to start at about 20% and just sort of have a look. That's too much. 10%, too much. 6%. Let's have a look. Whoops. Let's actually preview this page. Yeah, fantastic. That looks really, really good. But now on mobile things change a lot, don't they? They sort of the content becomes taller. So we might have to readjust the amount of negative margin here. We also need to readjust the layout of this repeating group. So let's head across to the responsive tab. And at 375, we can see that we possibly need some more negative margin on this group, okay, because it's not really ducking beneath it. So I'm going to go across to the conditional tab on image dashboard. I'm going to say page width. Smaller than 576. Chooses custom breakpoint. I'm going to find my bottom margin, currently minus 96. I'm going to choose 128. And there we go. Click somewhere else. Let's bring this back to front. Bring to front. All right, it's just the way the bubble. There we go. If I actually click down here, we can see that that's now working nicely. Now these logos obviously are going to look tiny here. So let's change 4 columns to 2 columns and 2 rows. Okay, so let's save ourselves some time. Let's just grab this expression from the conditional tab on image dashboard. And let's go down to logos, paste that in. So at that custom breakpoint, which is our only breakpoint in this course, we're going to change the rows and the columns. So currently we have 1 row, 4 columns. Let's say 2 columns, 2 rows. Let's go ahead and preview. Refresh the page. Okay, remember in a Chromium browser, right-click Inspect. And then we click on this little breakpoint option down here. And there we go. Now logos could actually even be slightly smaller if you wanted to. And the way to go about that would just be simply, we'll go through a similar process. So I've clicked on the first image. I'm going to paste in the expression for the breakpoint. And I can change the max width. So currently the max width was, what did I set it to on the image? So max width of 160. So maybe we could say a 120 max width. Okay, let's preview the page. Much nicer. More white space, which is what I like, okay? Easier to read. Now, what else is missing here? So let's just have a look at our spacing, 16. Yeah, everything is looking absolutely fantastic. Okay, so those are our 2 main sections. Now we're going to do our 3-column navigation bar. And this nav bar will be a floating group. The floating group will be a reusable element because nav bars and footers especially should be reusable elements. So we can reuse them on all pages, design from a central location. So let's jump back in and start with this nav bar design. So in terms of the nav bar, we are going to have 3 parts to it, right? 3 columns. You got your logo on the left, links in the middle, and action buttons on the right-hand side. Obviously, when it gets smaller, we need to remove elements and adapt the design for mobile. Let's take a look at the demo to see the starting point for this design. Okay, so logo on the left, that is just text. Of course, that could be an SVG image as well of your own company. In the center, we have some group links. On the right-hand side is our sign up button. Now to achieve this layout, I have used a row container because it's on the same row. And then I've chosen the space between flex option on the right-hand side here. Obviously, we could move things around. It wouldn't look very good. So I choose space between so it pushes the elements all the way to the end. Okay, then when we break down to responsive, what I've done is in this nav bar, I have the group container. Okay, this is for desktop. Well, it's for mobile as well. But when we want to interact with a mobile menu icon, then we're going to be showing this group here that I've just embedded into the navbar and which is collapsed by default with a slightly different design. Okay, these link elements. Now this is a reusable navbar and it's set as a floating group. So in the property editor, we can see it's a floating group here, vertically floating relative to the top. And it's a reusable element so that when we're on a page somewhere such as index or any page, we can scroll down to the bottom to the reusable elements section, pick up the navbar and drop it on any page. Okay, let's build this thing. So let's add a new reusable element. This is called navbar. And the way to think about reusable elements is like they are their own page. Reusable elements can have visual elements, they can have workflows, okay? So they can act as their own page. So we're just creating in native code, if you're a React user or other, you'd call this a component basically. We're just building a reusable component. Bring up the property editor. Let's first head to the layout. Now we're going to design a 1200, but of course it can stretch as far as it wants to. And there is no max width we're going to set on this. We will be setting a max width on the internal group container, however. Okay. Now on the appearance, let's change the background color to our surface color, the dusty pink color. Okay. And lastly, the element type, change it from a group to a floating group. Fantastic. So we have our reusable element, it's a floating group, and the building UI width is 1200. It can stretch as far or as narrow as it wants to from here. Now we're going to grab group, just going to drop it inside. This will be our group container. And this is what will contain and center our elements. So we're going to go down to max width 1200 and remove fit width to content. Okay. Now the elements inside this group are on the same axis, so we need this to be a row. And I'm going to set the height to 80 pixels. Okay, let's grab some text and let's add the little surface logo. So from memory, so type surface from memory, I think this is EB Garamond. And the size, maybe 24, semi-bold. Let's just have a look at the original design quickly. So 32, 600, okay, that's fine. Okay, now this navbar, we also need to add on the layout tab some left-right padding, 32 and 32. Okay, and then back on group container, let's just click on surface and make sure it's vertically aligned in the center of its parent container. Great. Now in terms of links, let's grab some link elements, and we need to use link elements because this is how Google manages to navigate your site when they send a crawler to your site. We also have the ability to submit a sitemap file and expose a sitemap file, which Google will also use, but it's very important that you also link all your pages together. You don't want to use buttons or text for this, you want to use actual links. Sometimes we have to link to pages with a button because we want to run a workflow, create data, adapt data. That's fine. Just make sure that in your header and in your navbar on all of your public-facing pages that you at least have most of the links, all the pages linked together. This is a very good strategy to also distribute authority. So Google actually ranks individual pages. It has a domain authority for your domain. which is also important. But you could have a blog page or blog article that ranks super high, and you can then link that back to your other blog articles, back to your landing page, any other page in your app. Okay, link elements. Say home. We're going to fit width to content on this. Remove the min width and the min height on this link element, please, and put it in the center. Okay, standard link 14. No, let's edit the style of the standard link. Let's make this 16 and medium. Okay. And also, what we can do now, actually, in group container itself, let's go to the layout tab and just choose space between on the container alignment. And what we'll do is just add a button to the mix so everything is lined up nicely. There is a button. I'm going to use the arrows on my keyboard to push it to the right-hand side. And then on the layout tab of the button, I'm just going to choose vertically align in the center. Okay, that's just so we can push the links to the center here. So I'm going to duplicate. And duplicate again, and duplicate one more time. And these can say anything. Why don't we say, let's look at the original. Product, community, and pricing. So product, community, pricing. With that done, let's highlight all 4 of the links. Right-click, group elements in a row container. Let's name this group links. Okay, let's distribute some even gap spacing here. Let's try 20. Yeah, I like that. Well, that was pretty quick, folks. We've got a lot of logic to do here, but yeah, that was very fast. Let's head over to the button. Let's say log in. I think we've got a get started button to sign a user up in the hero section itself, but you could add a second button here as well if you want to. Maybe let's add an icon as well. Let's try log in. Is there such a sign in? Not sure which. On the layout tab, I'm going to push this to the right hand side. That looks a bit odd. No, let's choose, let's do user. I'm using the phosphor one. Let's choose user. Yeah, I prefer that. Then on the layout tab, I am going to change what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to change the icon size to 20 for that. What else? What else? I think that should do it. Not going to get overly fussy with that. Okay. And then I'd like you to grab another group. Let's just get this up and running. And I want you to drop it inside not in the container, but in the navbar itself. This will be our group mobile links. On the layout tab, we're going to let this span edge to edge. And so we've got some design space to work within. That's too extreme, maybe 60. And then I'm just going to make the background white. Then I'm going to use my keyboard, press down arrow, put it down there for now. We'll come back to this. And on the layout tab, I'm going to collapse it for now. So collapse when hidden, not visible on page load. And when do we want to bring it back, folks? When page width is less than 576, which is our mobile breakpoint. That's when it's visible. Okay, now the navbar, so the size of this is 80. Okay, let's make the navbar 80. Min height 80. Obviously it grows when this opens, okay? Fantastic. Let's get this navbar onto our page. So let's head back to index. Just going to try bring that up, scroll down to the bottom, find your navbar, click once, click again. There it is. Brilliant. Let's preview the page. I'm going to close this guy, refresh. Okay, we need to fix this up. So this will be the container alignment. It's left aligned in the parent navbar element. Okay, because we have a max width of 1200. So by default, it's centered. By default, it's aligned left. Let's change that. So we have to double click our navbar or head over to the Parents tab and choose Edit Element. And if we click on our navbar in the Elements tree, head over to the Layout. Actually, the way to do this is actually to click on your group container, and then choose Horizontal Alignment in the center. Okay, Layout tab of the Group Container Alignment. The horizontal alignment needs to be in the center. Let's preview this. Very nice. Nicely centered. Now, if I inspect the page, I can see that, so what are we? If I bring this down slightly, so down to, gosh, actually our breakpoint will need to be earlier. Maybe 768 needs to be our mobile breakpoint because it's starting to touch around 590. Okay, and when it comes to building projects for yourself or your clients, you don't know how many links are going to be here, so you need to be a little bit flexible with your breakpoints at times. I try to use 576 most of the time. I'll use 768 in this particular instance. That's no problem. Maybe if you have even more links, you have a 992 breakpoint. That's okay. Okay, so let's do this. On group links, I am going to just reduce the column gap just a touch. I'm going to choose 12. Okay, and now I'm going to say that I'm going to define a condition. I'm going to say that when the page width is less than 768, then I would like to actually make this invisible. All right, make it invisible. Create more space because we're going to bring back the links at 576 over here. Actually, this now needs to change to 768 as well. So I've clicked on Group Mobile Links, and we have to match. Sorry, this is actually incorrect. I don't want to show it at 768. I want to actually show it when a button is clicked. So actually delete that. We don't need that breakpoint. Delete that. So Group Mobile Links has no conditional statement, but it is hidden by default. We're going to show it when we click on an icon. All right, anyway, let's go to the responsive tab and let's hit the 992 breakpoint. Things are looking fantastic. 768, brilliant. 1 pixel below 768 because we use less than. Let's bring this down. Boom, gone, more space. Great. That means we can now, my 576 breakpoint is missing for some reason. That's all right, I'll drag this out to 576. So on the left-hand side, you can see the page and parent container here. So this looks pretty good. Something we need to do though is on group links, which I've just clicked, please do the same. We need to make sure that on the layout tab of group links, we have collapse when hidden checked. So this frees up this internal space. All right, it actually works at our mobile width as well, but for the sake of learning, I want to do this. I'm going to right click on group links. I'm going to say copy conditional expressions. And on this button, I'm going to right click and say paste special, paste conditional expressions. Okay, so this is also hidden at the same breakpoint. And then on the layout tab of button login, also check collapse when hidden, frees up the space. So what we need to do now is show a little mobile menu here. Some people call it a hamburger menu. There are various names for it. So let's go back to our UI builder. And this is how I do it. This is the strategy. Grab yourself an icon, just drop it in anyway. Let's just get it in. And let's choose phosphor. Now, what would phosphor call this? Oh, here it is here. This is the icon I like. Text align left. Okay, I like to use that as mobile menus. And the sizing is fine. Let's center it vertically. Let's collapse when hidden, so it removes the actual horizontal space. And let's make sure it's not visible on page load. I don't want it visible on page load. When do I want it visible? Well, we want it visible on the opposite expression. So I'm going to click on group links. I'm going to say copy conditional expressions. I'm then going to head over to the element tree, find my group links, find my phosphor icon. Maybe we can change the name here. Let's say icon mobile. Okay, so let's actually show this icon mobile. Now I'm going to, so on the icon, I'm going to paste special, paste conditional expressions. Okay, you can also just write this expression yourself. Page width is smaller than 768. So now when the opposite is true, so when the current page width is smaller than 768, this is going to be visible. Okay, it's going to be visible. So it's not visible by default. Let's try this out. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my keyboard just to move it to the right-hand side. So on the responsive tab, well, you can see it there. So you can't see it there. Bring this handle down, and now you can see it. All right, nice and neat. Now we need to run a workflow to show the link group. So I'm just going to do it from the responsive editor. I'm going to add a workflow. It basically says toggle element actions, toggle an element, and we want to toggle group mobile links. Another neat trick I like to do as well is, let me go back to responsive tab. Another neat trick I like to do is say that if you open up group mobile links, on the conditional tab, I want to change this icon when the links are open to an X. So we can just target the visibility of this group mobile links. So when group mobile links, then we can say is visible, that's when this icon is a different icon. I'm going to type X on my keyboard, find the X icon, and there we go. And that's that. That's solved. All right, so let's put the links inside here. So for that, we need to grab them from here. Here are the group links. I'm going to copy, go into the group, and paste. Try that again. Copy. It's playing hardball today. Okay, let's go to contextual menu, copy, and paste. Where is my paste? Edit. So it's not actually working for some reason. Let me try from the UI builder. Copy. All right, sorry about that, guys. I don't know what happened there. Anyway, layout needs to change. It needs to be a column now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of this text. I want to just change the styling a little bit. I'm going to rather choose 24. And on the spacing, actually that's too large. Let's do 20 instead. Because don't forget, phone density is normally double, right? So 16 pixel text will end up looking like 8 pixel text on most modern phones. So in group mobile links, I'm going to head over to the layout tab and just add some gap spacing. Let's try 12. Maybe what is wrong here? Fit height to content. Oh, I was adding it. Sorry, I was adding it on this group here. So there's another group here. That's okay. Let's add it there. I'm going to add 6. And yep, pretty happy with that. Pretty happy. Let's try this out. Let's go down to mobile. And we can see a bit of a padding issue here, but there's definitely something. Right, that's fine. We can see that we did change to an X icon. Let's go back to our design and fix this. Okay, first of all, we've got 32 pixels of left-right padding on the navbar. Navbar element in the element tree. I'm going to remove that. I'm going to say 0, 0. And instead, I'm going to place it on the group container. Group container, layout tab, 32 by 32. But I'm going to say when the page width is less than 576. Nope. 768 was when we changed the design, our breakpoint. That's when the left-right padding becomes 16 and 16. Okay. I'm going to right-click, copy. Actually, in here, in group mobile links, all we need to do here is add 16 and 16 because you're not going to see it at desktop width. So automatically it's just 16 and 16 works just fine. And maybe some bottom padding here. Choose 32 for that. And maybe top padding 32. Yeah, that looks good. The other issue I noticed was back on the index page that this AI Assist badge was being lost. So on the Conditions tab, let's say that we're going to change the top padding. I can see the problem here. So the top padding needs to be 96 and the bottom padding 64. Let's have another look. So AI Assist has been fixed. What about this guy? Still a problem here. What is the problem? Let's go investigate. All right, let's go to our navbar first of all. Let's open up group links. And so there's nothing on the conditional statement. It's not visible on page load. It's collapse when hidden. What about this group here? Aha. So we've, when I copied and pasted group links, I actually inherited the conditional statements here. So go ahead and delete the conditional statements. Okay, group links, delete conditional statements for the mobile. I'm going to change this to mobile. We don't need collapse when hidden because we're actually collapsing this outer group. We don't even need fit width to content. None of these need fit width to content. I'm going to remove fit width to content. Let's have a look at responsive. We bring this group links back. Works nicely there. Okay. Guys, I think we might be in luck. Which one is this? I think we might be in luck, folks. So let's try this. Click here. Yep, there's the links. If I scroll, obviously, we've got one more thing to do here to make this background white when I scroll. Close, open, 375, close, open. So back in Bubble, let's do the following. in the UI builder, now we've applied to our color to the navbar, which is perfect. Here is the background color, surface. I want to show you a neat little scroll animation here. I'm going to scroll right down to the bottom because we have something here called current page scroll position, which is a numerical, okay? It's a value. And Bubble can track this value. When that value is greater than 80, this could be any number. This is arbitrary for me. I'm just matching the size of my navbar itself. So when I've scrolled 80 pixels down the page, then I want the background color to basically change to white. And the other thing I want to do is on the Appearance tab, I'm going to go to the bottom of the tab and find Background Style and add 250 pixels of Style Transition. Let's preview the page. And when I scroll down, you can see that lovely animation transition. And this is where this looks sort of a lot better in the design, less so here. But you could also have a conditional statement to change, to start with a dusty pink color and change it to white based on scroll position. We're not going to cover that because I've basically just shown you how to do it right now. And let's go back to our desktop version, scroll down, beautiful white top, fantastic. One last look at mobile. These buttons could have been stacked in a column. Why don't we do that? That's the last thing we're going to do. Head back to the index page. And the first thing we need to do is on group get started, I'm going to do the following. Page width less than. I'm going to use a different breakpoint here. I think the buttons will be too wide at 768, so we're going to use 576. Here's a new one for you, min width. Now the min width needs to be variable. I don't know an exact figure. I want it to be edge to edge on the mobile phone with the 16 pixels of neat padding throughout the page. So I just want the buttons to fill that space beneath 576. So instead of a pixel value, I'm going to choose a percentage value. I'm going to say 100%. So in English, when the current page width is less than 576, the button width should span all available horizontal space. Okay. I'm going to copy special, copy conditional expressions, and do the same for learn more. Okay. Now, this group needs a bit of gap spacing on the row gap because it has column gap, which is the horizontal space. But when these buttons push 100% of all available space within group buttons, then obviously they need a bit of vertical gap as well. So I'm going to choose a bit less for that. I'm going to choose 16 for that. And the last thing we need to do is also let this particular group span edge to edge. So I'm going to copy special, copy conditional expressions, and actually paste it into this group itself. So group buttons now has a conditional statement the same as the buttons within. So on the responsive tab, if I now go down to 375, you can see how they have now been stacked in a column layout, okay? There you go. Okay, folks, that concludes part one, the marketing page. Now, we didn't do every single section. I think we would be here for a few days if we did, but this shows you the concepts around spacing, typography, little bit of color, not too much, but I've shown you UI colors about Tailwind design and how to utilize those colors if you want them. But color should really come last, right? Get the design correct, get the typography right, the weight of the typography, the spacing, the line spacing, the spacing between the various elements, the element sizing, the breakpoints. That is UI design. You get that right, the rest is easy. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next one.